Rick and Morty Season 4 has come to a close, and man did it tie up a lot of loose ends from the previous seasons. If you're one of those people who hates every Rick and Morty fan who ever theorized about future episode threads, I have some bad news for you. I'm Whitney Van Laningham, and today we're talking about the ending of Rick and Morty Season 4. Instead of asking Nerdwire fans to donate to our Patreon, I want to encourage you to make a donation to Black Lives Matter or another Black organization. It would be a waste of this platform not to advocate for the Black community, and I hope you'll join us in giving what you can. Any support you can give will go a long way. No act of empathy is too small. Thanks in advance for your donations and your time. Stay safe out there. Now let's talk Rick and Morty. Okay, I just have to get this out of my system real quick. Beth is a clone? Man, I bet all those Rick and Morty fans who yelled at people on Reddit for reading too much into the clone theory are really shitting their balls out right now. But seriously, sweet Jesus' cum gutters, this was a jam-packed episode. It feels like fans really got to see a lot of what they wanted. More screen time with Tammy and Bird Person, aka Phoenix Person, aka Pee-Pee, a Poke and Morty battle, an epic duel to the almost death, Beth having a space clone, and Rick finally realizing he's kind of a trash dad. After the Story Train episode, parts of this episode feel like the creators begrudgingly adding these details to shut the fans up. Or are they just doing their own thing and writing whatever works best for the story? I think it's a little of both. Yes, they've relentlessly mocked Marvel movies and Star Wars, but I also don't think that Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland do anything that they don't want to do. I'm sure that there will always be fans of the show who hate the through lines and want to stick to classic adventure episodes, but I think this episode and the threads that culminated in it did a pretty great job. To begin unpacking this, let's refresh ourselves with the Beth clone theory. Ever since the ABCs of Beth, we've all been dying to know if Rick really did clone his daughter. He presented two options to Beth. She could either choose to live a life centered around her family, or she could F off and live the life she's always wanted. At the time, she and Jerri were separated, and although Beth clearly loves Morty and Summer, the idea of replacing herself with a no chance of going Blade Runner clone seemed like a consequence-free way to get out of her mundane life and allow her to start being an intergalactic super genius just like her dad. It was finally time for her to figure out who she is, separately from trying to gain her dad's approval and taking care of Jerri's fumbling nonsense. And Rick's offer seemed to stem from a genuine place of wanting to make his daughter feel happy and fulfilled. Beth's final choice remained a mystery, but fans of this theory had eagle eyes on every instance of Beth acting strangely. For starters, there's her final scene in the ABCs of Beth, when she lovingly hugs Rick and orders a pizza for her family. It seems pretty implausible that the real Beth would have interacted with her family so calmly after making such a huge life-altering decision. Unless Rick implanted a memory into her brain where she enthusiastically made the choice to stay and work things out with her family. She just found out that she was a child sociopath and that she's more like the negative parts of her father than she realized. It just felt off somehow that she was so chill about everything in the aftermath. This would explain why, in the next episode, Beth stands up to her dad and tells him that even if she is a clone, she can't relate to the version of herself that would want to leave her family, and that she wants to stay with them. The memory of her conversation with Rick about choosing would still be intact, but if her other self wanted to leave, she wouldn't have that memory. Summer also made this joke in the Season 3 finale.
The idea that I was motivated by a fear of you leaving can be a shoot.
A shoot? You've never used that word. Maybe you are a clone.
It's not like Rick would tell us.
Even though Summer was kidding, Beth's whole attitude towards Jerri and Rick has totally shifted. She's now defending her marriage and standing up for her husband against Rick's mean comments, which she definitely hasn't done in a while. Her relationship with Summer overall seems to improve, like in that scene where she tells Summer to go ahead and buy the outfit that makes her feel confident about her body. Also, some fans have focused on Beth's fourth wall break in the Rick, Jerri, and Morty date as proof that she's a clone.
We're a real family now. In many ways, things will be like Season 1, but more streamlined.
Her saying that things will be more like Season 1 but streamlined could mean that Rick accidentally or intentionally uploaded the fact that they're on a TV show to the clone. This version of Beth also seems to be less centered on gaining Rick's approval. Like I mentioned earlier, she's been standing in support of Jerri more. And actually, Jerri has been crushing it with saving the day this season. Perhaps he was able to pull a weekend at Bernie's with Tammy's corpse and rescue Beth from the children she and Rick raised on Gaia because Beth's rekindled passion for her husband is finally giving him more confidence. As we learned in Season 2, Episode 7, Beth and Jerri's toxic personalities manifest in extreme opposites. While Beth's toxicity is rooted in her condescending intellect, Jerri's is depicted as a spineless worm creature. They say that plants thrive more when you speak positively to them, and I think that the same thing has happened to Jerri via Beth's commitment to working things out. She's choosing every day to fight for her marriage, which is something that she used to actively avoid by siding with her father and putting down Jerri's every mistake. Finally, all is revealed, and surprise, she definitely has a clone, or is a clone. We'll get to that. Space Beth is a total badass, and is now the #1 most wanted being in the entire multiverse thanks to her leading the Defiance against the Gromful Knights. While getting her arm fixed up after a battle, she learns that there's a proximity device in her neck that she assumes will kill her if she comes within spitting distance of Earthbeth. Assuming that her dad wanted her to stay away so badly that he rigged a bomb inside of her, Space Beth decides to kill him once and for all. I do think it's interesting that we never get a definitive answer as to what the neck implants are. It's safe to say the show leans hard into describing them as bombs, with Space Beth even getting professional opinions on it. But Rick also does make a case for it being, for lack of a better term, a clone unifier. Is it possibly a way to unite the memories of both Space and Earthbeth, or is it just a bomb like Rick says later in the episode? I find it hard to believe that he'd rig both Beths with bombs, considering how desperate he is for both of their approval by the end of the episode. Instead of slaying Rick, the two Beths actually come to an understanding of one another. I think that this is a great lesson in the dualities of all of our personalities, and speaks to the idea that healing begins when you honor all parts of yourself. Beth realizes that there's a part of her that wants to use the smarts her dad passed on to her to make a difference in the galaxy, but that there's another part of her that wants to be a wife, mother, daughter, and horse surgeon too. Staying true to yourself doesn't mean that you have to choose, which is why it's revealed that Rick made the choice for her. Although Beth and the rest of the Smith family opt out of finding out which is the clone and which is the real deal, Rick decides to watch the mind blower he made when his daughter asked him to decide whether to stay or to go. One version of Beth just wanted her dad to ask her to stay, but the other part of Beth wanted the freedom to forge her own path away from her family and Rick's legacy. In the end, it turns out that Rick really just is a piece of shit father. He purposefully made sure not to pay attention while he was creating the clone. Instead of making note of which one was his real daughter and which one was respawned in a microwave, Rick mixed them up like a lame street magician. As for speculating whether Space Beth or Earthbeth is the clone, my money was on Space Beth being the original. But after seeing the latest Pocket Morty's commercial pop up during the episode, I'm not so sure. Pocket Morty's labels Beth as Clone Beth, which would mean that Earthbeth is the real Beth. This would mean that the real Beth really did want to form healthy relationships with her family, and that the healthy boundaries she set are actually coming from her desire to be better. It makes sense that the clone version of Beth would choose the more Rick-like decision to abandon her family in favor of her own adventures. On the other hand, labeling Space Beth as Clone Beth could just be the creative team behind Pocket Morty's decision and an oversimplification for marketing reasons. In the behind-the-scenes companion to this episode, creator Dan Harmon says that he always viewed Earthbeth as the clone. While that's pretty strong evidence in favor of Earthbeth being the clone, he could have just as easily changed his opinion on who the clone is while developing the episode. And ultimately, the show doesn't want us to know who the clone is, because that's the point. Both of these women are living and breathing versions of Beth, and one being confirmed as the prime Beth would partially delegitimize the personhood of the other. It doesn't matter who is the quote-unquote real Beth, because they both are. The Beth's realization that her character is multifaceted and complex helps them realize once and for all that they don't need their dad's approval, because they're enough. That leads to the culmination of Rick's arc, which has been building all season. He finally realizes that he's a shitty father, and by extension a failure. Now don't get your panties twisted, I know that Rick has proclaimed his bad dadness in previous episodes, but those other times didn't seem as sincere. Besides, each of Rick's depressive episodes have been building each time he alienates his family or lets them down in a major way. Just look at the ABCs of Beth, where he admits to being a bad father, but puts equal blame on his daughter for giving him no choice but to abandon her in Fruipyland. She admits that she just wanted to spend time with him, but Rick insists that it's partially her fault for terrorizing the neighborhood kids. This time, though, it really hits Rick that he should have been a little less nihilistic and flippant when it came to cloning his daughter. His voice and his body language are similar to other episodes where he realizes that he's an asshole, like when he almost kills himself in the garage or sits through his own beratement on that toilet planet. Rick has always been open with his moral failings, but the big overarching story of Rick and Morty is that Rick wants to be a better family man. He's re-entered Beth's life and is making it a point to be a part of Morty and Summers. When faced with the thought that maybe he failed Beth by letting her settle into mundanity with Jerri and a family, he makes a clone that lets her live out a life without those anchors holding her back. Just maybe if he can give her a second chance at a life unfettered, she'll be happy and he won't have botched the biggest responsibility of his life. The result? He ends up with 2 daughters disappointed in him instead of just 1. I think he finally realized that it isn't Jerri's influence that spoiled his daughter's love for him, like Rick loves to think. It's his own shortcomings as a person. Or alternatively, it's a disconnect with the fact that part of parenthood is accepting that your children will become their own people, and a portion of that is that their love and reliance on you naturally fades a bit as they grow. Either way, Rick's grasp on fatherhood bothers him deep into his metal-encased heart. When everyone leaves at the end of the episode, he's once again the outlier in his family because he refuses to address his unhealthy relationships with them. The lesson we learned this season is that it's worth it to put in the work to make yourself and others happy, and Rick's loner attitude will be his downfall. It's sort of like Tammy said, if Rick is left alone, he's a non-threat. He can't abuse his relationships with Morty, Summer, Beth, and Jerri if they stand together and stand up to him. At the end of the episode, Rick is left with the remains of Bird Person, hoping that he can be a better friend than a father. Maybe if he can fix BP, he can find purpose beyond nihilistically sciencing throughout the multiverse. It looks like Bird Person will need lots of literal and metaphorical repairing before he trusts Rick again, but I have hope that Rick can do the job. Next season, I'd personally really like to see Rick start a journey towards mending his relationships, as he slowly starts to become a better person. The creators have made it pretty clear that they're uncomfortable with some of the hero worship fans have for Rick's negative behaviors, and based on this ending, I believe we'll see him taking a path similar to BoJack Horseman's going forward. Not to say that they'll lean as heavy into personal rehabilitation as BoJack, but I do think that Rick will have to learn some harsh lessons as he struggles with his grand battle with ego and selfishness. Repairing Bird Person looks to me like the first step. But I want to know what you guys think. Will Rick start to fix his piss-poor attitude next season? Which Beth do you think is the clone? Let me know in the comments below, like and subscribe to Nerdwire, and watch out for Invisible Garbage Truck Jerri! It's a new franchise!